good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book after a couple of weeks. Last week was Thanksgiving. We are finishing law of reproduction. We have the last item that is only a couple of questions, polygamy, and then we move to law of preservation. So, Philip, can you read us both questions?
Certainly.
The last two.
Polygamy. Is the almost exact numerical equality existing between the sexes an indication of the proportions according to which they should be united? Yes, because every plan in nature has a specific purpose. 701. Is polygamy or monogamy more in compliance with the laws of nature? Polygamy is a human invention, the rejection of which marks an era of social progress. God intended that marriage should be based on the existence of true affection between the individuals who enter into it. In polygamy, there is only sensuality, but no real affection. If polygamy were consistent with the laws of nature, it would be possible to institute it everywhere. However, it would be physically impossible to do so due to the numerical equality of men and women. Therefore, polygamy must be labeled a social custom, adapted to the circumstances of specific nations or populations. It will gradually disappear as these populations improve socially.
Yeah, so nowadays, we still have polygamy in some African tribes. We have kind of hidden polygamy amongst the Mormons, right? It's not legal amongst them, but apparently they still practiced in some small parts. In the Arab world, yes. That's true. I forgot about some, but again, not very widespread. It's more restricted, but still, you still find it. And actually there is polygamy in both ways. In some African tribes, there is polygamy with many men for one woman. Yes. Yeah. The other here in the Mormons and in the Arab world is one man with several wives, right? Again, you know, reason tells us that this is not a natural law, because otherwise we wouldn't have more or less half and half men and women in the world, right? Of course, we can go a little bit in more complex directions on different unions that you have amongst the same sex or same gender, but that's not the discussion here, right? The idea here is that the natural law is a family based in a couple, right? On a couple, not on a multiple people. But again, why it still happens? Because we are still more, in some aspects, we are more connected to our instinctual nature. That you know, you see the animals. There are very few species that are monogamous. Yes, most of the species they don't. They have multiple partners, but again, with the intent of procreate, right? In animals, we humans use the relationships in a more complex sense. So again, as we evolve as spirits, we are going to see less and less this, and it's already not very common, and we don't hear it as much today as it was at the time of Kardec. That was more common still, especially amongst the tribes and you know the Mormons were starting. They started in 1830, right, or something like that. So it was something that happened here in this country also. But
They're from New York. They
yes,
started in New York, yeah.
yes, and then they start being persecuted and moving away, and ended up in Utah. Yeah. So, you know, it's as Kardec says here, polygamy is a social custom adapted to the circumstance of specific nations and populations. It will gradually disappear as these populations improve socially. As we evolve as eternal spirits, right? We will, again, we left the forceful of marriages, imposed marriages, that there was no way out of marriage, to a society that it's much more open to separations, different forms of separations and possibilities of new unions. And in this process of evolution, we will reach a stage that we will, as more evolved spirits, we will understand our nature as eternal spirits and the necessity of forming families for the purpose of helping society in its different, not necessarily only for procreation, but also to help society as unities, right, that work stronger. Okay, right? Any questions here?
I do have a question. So, what is your opinion in terms? Because I think, when you think about yourself as a spirit that lives in the spiritual world, you could also have bondings and marriages or connections there, right? Between spirits in, let's say, the afterlife or in between incarnations. And what would be the connection? Would spirits tend to be connected to the same spirit, and then, but they might take different incarnations, and then, let's say, I could be married to someone in this life, but then in the spiritual world, I'll be maybe married to some other spirits or have a different bond or connection. And how is that kind of relation works together?
The connection between spirits is a connection through love in the pure sense, not in the carnal sense, right? Here, we need to procreate. It's a natural instinct, right? So in order to do that, we form families, couples, right? We're not going to go into the you know, let's just stick to the basic, which is a man and a woman get married to procreate, right? That's how we as society evolve. Now, the connections that we have with our loved ones, being our partners, our children, our parents, the real connections, they will stay in the spiritual world. So when you go back to the spiritual world after this incarnation, you may still look at your wife as your wife there, right? You see that in the book Nosso Lar, that André Luiz describes that family that he stayed with. But us as eternal spirits, our family will continue to grow. So, and for, let's say, for the next incarnation, you and your wife better come as brother and sister, because you are going to work better as brother and sister, or father and daughter, or, you know, so you may change, but the affection of an eternal spirit will always prevail. So there is no such thing as marriage in the spiritual world.
More like bonded, right?
Yes, it's there are companions, spirits, spiritual affinities that will continue in the spiritual world, but not with the bonds of marriage that we know here, and not with the bonds of let's say, children and parents and grandparents, right? So you can go back to the spiritual world and find yourself in a place above your parents, right? So here they educated you, they took care of you, and then you may have to take care of them in the spiritual world, like André Luiz with his father, right? And his two sisters, that they were in the lower zones, and he mentions that the care that you know, he would have to take care of them, not as his father, but as a spirit that he cares for, that is in need, that he needs to help. So, you know, again, the laws of society are created by humans for living here on Earth. But as we evolve, our laws, human laws, will change also. So the marriage, a signed marriage, meaning you have to go to City Hall to get married. Maybe in 200, 300, 500 years, we would have evolved enough that we don't need that. Society will protect the union of a couple just by it's being a union, right? Nowadays,
It's already started, but
yeah, exactly. Nowadays, we still have, marriage is convenient for a series of legal reasons, right? For your children, for laws of inheritance and many other laws, social security and all these other things. But on a more evolved society, all this shouldn't be necessary. So an official compromise of, signing something also shouldn't be required. But for the time being, it is, and it's useful for us.
So, if I understand you correctly, that terminology of relationships then eventually fades away because it's just pure
Well, define relationship, right?
husband and wife,
Yeah.
father and child, grandmother and grandchild, all those relationships.
When we go back to the spiritual world, they should.
Not now, but
Yeah.
eventually,
Yes.
eventually the infinite, I don't know, infinity.
Yes.
All those relations labels are just going to drop themselves. They're not, that's not the one that will.
They will naturally disappear. Yes.
Exactly. definitely.
But the important thing here is naturally, right? We cannot force.
No, cannot afford, but eventually.
Yeah.
That's how I'm looking at it because of what you were stating.
Yeah.
That is pure love.
So, what we see is some people trying to force the changes, refusing to follow human laws because they think that humans laws are backwards in the sense. And again, some are and they need to be changed, but you cannot rebel against all laws because then you become a pariah in society, right? So you need to make changes to the laws and adapt to the laws according, if you don't want to drive 8th Avenue on the other way because you're going to crash and yeah, exactly. So, you have to follow the laws if you want to live in society, and we need laws. So this naturally, we are going to evolve out of it, right? Yeah, it's always the example that Elmo brought of the in Sweden of the headlights, right? They wanted to pass a law to force cars to use headlights during the day, right? And then they decided to analyze for how long? 6 months, 3 months, 1 year?
6 months later, they were trying to bring the topic back to discussion, and the guy who suggested said, no, forget it, let's not do this anymore. So why? Because I did my research and I see that over 80% of the population already drive with the lights on during the day. So there's no need for law.
That's the natural evolution.
Yeah.
That's what.
Which is good. I just
yeah.
put my what you call it, my insurance of.
Yeah.
That right.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have to say the union of man and woman, something here for us in anthropology, is because of the need that the offspring requires. It's extremely difficult for a woman postpartum take care of the baby and herself, let's say prehistorically, with all the wolves and everybody around. It was necessary to have someone else to help them. That is the formation of those bonds, anthropologically speaking. Even the sexuality of woman derives from that. A woman needs to find a ways to hold on to the guy next to her, to help her to raise that kid, because human offspring's babies are 100% dependent, unlike some of the animals. And even in the other among other species, those that got married or stay together is because the offspring is extremely dependent and requires more than one adult to take care of them. From there, you develop affection. The answer doesn't say love, it says affection if you read. Right, it says affection.
True affection between the individuals, yeah.
See, the word's not love.
Yeah.
And you create that bond out of necessity, and through that necessity, because both parents want to take care, want the success of that offspring, that baby, and then develops from that you develop affections. Okay. Now it's up to us to progress, and I always say that here. Once we die, we should all see one another as brothers and sisters, period. Forget to think of mom, daddy, husband, wife. Can we? I don't think I can, but I say we should. And one day, perhaps, we will. But let's say my previous incarnation, I was a woman and I have a husband to wait for me when I get back there. How am I gonna do with the situation? How am I gonna identify myself as an ex-wife? So by all of us, assume that you leave this physical body behind, you leave all those blood ties behind, and you all become brothers and sisters. You eliminate other problems. But can we?
Nope.
Very good.
Not yet.
Eventually.
Yes, but that's the natural path. Yeah, that's what we have to aim for, right?
Because I thought about it.
Yeah.
There's something there,
Yeah,
put the butterfly on you,
yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, so we're moving into another law of preservation.
That's
Okay.
a good one.
Yes,
I don't know about that one.
go ahead, Philip.
702. Is the instinct of self-preservation a law of nature? Of course. Regardless of intelligence, it is given to all living creatures. In some, it is purely mechanical, while in others, it is associated with reason.
Okay,
703.
no, so self-preservation. Why it's a natural law? Because we need to have this instinct to survive. If we don't have the instinct of self-preservation, the human race would be extinct very quickly. And so how we develop that instinct? It starts in the vegetable part of the evolution, right? Vegetables already have this instinct of self-preservation. The tree looks for the sun, right? Looks for the roots, looks for nutrients in the soil. This is not rational. This is purely, it's even not even instinct, it's mechanical. Yes, right?
Same with viruses or microorganisms.
Yes, which is the very basic, it's the very primitive forms of animals, right? And then in the animal phase, right? All animals have the instinct of self-preservation, right? They try to feed themselves, procreate. Why they want to procreate? It's self-preservation, right? Preservation of the species. It's not conscious, it's completely instinctive, but it is there. So when we get to the human phase, when we become individual spirits and humans, we bring all this from our evolutionary path. So this is a law of nature, and this is an instinct that we bring with ourselves, right? So if we didn't have, when you were in danger, you wouldn't fight against the danger, try to avoid the danger. It's instinctive, right? If something is going to hit you, you try to avoid.
It's a classical, chronicle in psychology, they call it a fight or flight
Fight or flight, yes.
response.
That's instinctive. So we have the instinct of self-preservation. It's clear. Now, when we go against the instinct, yes, for those that commit suicide, right? It's rationalizing against the instinct for reasons, several different reasons. you don't have that in animals, right? You don't have any animals committing suicide. Yeah, there are some stories, but there is no animals committing suicide. This is something that you do when you have reasoning, when you have the capacity of making decisions on what to do with your life. But it's also against the natural law, right, to kill oneself. But so again, it's a law of nature. Okay.
But I have to say that some of us are not really well adjusted and may exhibit some inclinations towards not self-regulation. It's a classical Freudian concept of analysis.
Yes, but it is either these are
Exception?
problems, mental problems, right? There are problems. The spirit has mental problems, the incarnated spirit, that it can be caused by a problem with the spirit itself or physical problems. Sometimes the brain gets affected by diseases or something.
Well, anyway,
But
go
it's
with hysterics.
yeah. But it's not a natural thing, right? The natural instinct is of self-preservation, and you see that, you see sometimes people that are very old, that are mostly cannot function by themselves, and almost works in a hospital, and he sees that, right? And they refuse to die. They try all they can to not die. It's
Well, you see that every time. You see someone on hemodialysis. One of the most difficult things to do is hemodialysis. Anyone who has a family who has been extremely difficult. And people go 20, 30 years with that very difficult thing, but 3 times a week you have to purify your blood through a machine, and and after those 3 hours, it's kind of at least a good 6 hours in so much stress to recover that thing. And people do it. They'll do for as long as they can. They'll not just give up and die. There is a law of preservation. If it wasn't for the law of preservation, you'd say, I'm not going to put up with this thing. You go 2 or 3 times and say, nah, this is not for me. I'd rather go to the other side.
I'll ask you this. Is it the law of preservation or is it fear?
both.
I was gonna ask
Both.
if fear of that can be
Both.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You thought about that too?
Yeah.
Fear.
So I'll ask you then,
I don't know.
it's instinct, right? The word is instinct, right? So a cat, a lion, a dog, is it fear or instinct?
In that was instinct.
So why would animal would be different? So why would be different with us human beings?
Would a fear of that be an instinct to self-preserve the species, and then as you
Yes,
start to reason, you can overcome them?
You can put that in that. It is instinct. The word is instinct. Right. Now, this instinct causes the fear of death. I would agree with you. But since we are reasonable beings, we can bypass this instinct and think, right? Then we can make this. That's why people commit suicide, because they use reasoning to bypass instinct, right? You can also use reason and bypass fear. That's why you see people going, let's say, to a long course of chemotherapy and radiation, and it's just not working, and depends too much. They make a reasonable decision, say, I'm going to stop everything. I'm going to allow nature to take its course. I'm okay. I'm not in fear. It's not a suicide. It's bypassing fear now, and let nature takes its course. But yes, there will be fears associated with instinct of preservation, but with reason can bypass both.
Yeah, because this prize actually bypassed both because it was new.
Yeah, well, it's difficult for us to understand a perfect spirit, right? But
Anyway,
yeah,
it was anyways. They came into this dimension, so that means that this problem solid or good, or what they would have been here.
Yeah.
So it was, I look at Edmonton as a very much, I mean, powerful, but I don't know that. But my point is that he was very much accepting.
Yeah, well,
I
he
mean,
was using it as an example to all of us, right? Knowing fully well the consequences of what he was going through, how his example would stay with humanity. I'm sure as the governor of this planet and the perfect spirit, he understood completely the consequences, right? And the necessity and everything. But now to say if he had any fear or it's try to understand the perfect spirit, and we're not there. Yeah, it's just a speculation, and it's hard to speculate.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Acceptance, I believe that he had a degree of acceptance.
Acceptance, yes, 100%.
This is the state of it, I'm just want to walk through it. Because at the same time, if I'm walking through it, I'm also at the same time totally detached from it.
Yeah, we don't need to go to a perfect spirit, but that is left at our level as acceptance. To reach a level in their existence so that they are totally comfortable with that, with no fear of that.
Yeah, you have the Christians in the circus, the reports of them being thrown to the animals and singing without any fear of death, right? So it's the ability of overcoming the fear of death. Yeah.
I believe that once it's good, you can go beyond physicality.
Yeah. Now, how does this conflict with self-preservation? Well, if they could, they would like to survive, but you are placed in a position that you are not going to survive. So, what can you do with you embrace what's coming, and how you embrace it. It's actually going to make the difference on how you wake up on the other side, right? In a peaceful way or in a more disturbed way.
There's a prayer that goes like, embrace reality as is and not as I would have it.
How is it again? Embrace
reality as is.
Reality as is.
And not as I would have it.
Yeah.
That's our serenity.
Serenity prayer.
Yeah, the answer, the lack of the original happy in this dimension. And I got to do my percent. I'm so pretty much in the next.
Okay. 703, Philip.
Why has God given the instinct of self-preservation to all living creatures? God has given them the desire to live to carry out the designs of providence. Furthermore, life is necessary for the improvement of beings. All living beings feel it instinctively without understanding it.
Again, for the planet to exist as it is, it continue evolving, and we continue coming and having the opportunity of following the law of reincarnation, which is another natural law. We need to have the instinct of self-preservation, because otherwise nothing would work, right? We wouldn't be surviving here and growing. So as they say, Spirit says here, all living beings, and again, all living beings going from the vegetable to the animal to the humans, feel it instinctively without understanding it, many cases, right? Okay. Right? Okay, now means of self-preservation.
In giving humans the desire to live, has God always provided them with the means of doing so? Yes. And if they do not always find the means, it is because they do not understand them. God would not instill the love of life in humankind without giving them the means to live, and God has created earth so that it is able to produce sufficient means for all its inhabitants. Only that which is necessary is useful, while superfluous are never useful.
Yeah, now
Tell me in English that, because I just did not understand that.
now we get into the how we are placed on this planet, and are we provided by God with means of self-preservation? And the Spirit says, yes, Earth provides to us the means to survive. We just have to do our part on it, right? Nobody should lose their life for lack of resources, because Earth provides the resources.
Are we talking about
That's in theory. Now, when we start placing ourselves and our work and our intelligence and our greed and all the things, is when we create problems for ourselves. But if you think, let's go back to the primitives, right? The cavemen, right? Did they have enough to survive? Yes, they would have to hunt. They learn from a young age to hunt in the beginning, and then eventually they learn agriculture as they were evolved, no longer as cavemen, right? So the means were there. It was just a matter of going after it. The fruits were there in the trees. There were vegetables available, plants available that they could eat, they could try, right? So Earth always provided. Now, what happens is that we, through, as they say here, through our greed and through our control of the distribution and means of production and everything else, then we create the problems that causes part of the population to not have enough to survive. And it was worse, actually, in hundreds of years ago. You have the famines, right, that you hear through. Nowadays, we still have it, but in a smaller scale. And you have the ability to when you have it happening in a large scale, humanity gets together and help. The problem is that you have those that are happening right now, and we don't hear because they are not on a large scale. They are on a small scale in some African tribes, in some regions of Africa, even some regions in some places in civilized, more developed countries. You have people that are dying for lack of food. But that, as I like always to say here, is not lack of resources, is lack of efficient distribution, right? A lot of food is thrown away every day, right? From every houses, from supermarkets, from restaurants, yes.
So can I say that? Is this a political statement if you look at it from today's perspective? It could be. I don't want to put the politics into this.
I don't think it's political in the sense of it's more of in the sense of it's a human reality of the imperfect beings that we are not able to provide for everyone that live on Earth the means to survive. It's our responsibility as a society, right? And our lack of awareness of the necessity of practicing charity at all times, right? But we are imperfect spirits, and that's why we need to learn and to evolve from that, right? We have programs, and Raquel works in a program to distribute food, right, to homeless. We have programs in the countries that try to help, not perfect, still not very efficient. In some places, more developed countries, everything is public. In less developed countries, a lot of private, the society does it. In Brazil, it's very common, spiritual centers that have these caravans that will provide food for those in need. But still, Earth provides. We know that.
What is it?
We are the ones that are making a mess of it, right?
It's quite interesting that this book was written in what,
1857, yeah.
1857?
Yeah, Kardec was,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because at that time, I think Malthus was a little bit after 1857, right? Malthus, I think it's
Same time.
it's around the same time, right? That he came with the theory that we would all starve in the future, right?
Yeah.
Because the evolution of population was geometrically, and then the food was arithmetically, and of course with all the developments, we changed that, right? The growth of, he was right on the growth of the population. It continues to be, right? But the growth of actually the growth of food was much more exponential, right?
And he actually predicted.
That he actually predicted, yeah. But yeah. Okay.
705.
Yeah.
Why is it that the earth does not always produce enough to provide the human race with what is necessary to live? Because human beings are ungrateful and neglect to make fruitful use of the earth's bounty. Nevertheless, she is an excellent mother. They often accuse nature of what is truly the direct consequence of their own nearsightedness. If human beings could simply be content with what is necessary, the earth would always provide it. If it does not provide for all their wants, it is because humanity use Earth's resources to supply luxuries when they should be setting them aside to supply necessities instead. Look at the example of Arabs in the desert. They always find enough to survive because they do not create artificial needs. When half of the earth's products are squandered in gratifying impulsive wishes and demands, should humans be astonished when they run out? And do they have any reason to complain if they are poorly equipped when scarcity strikes? I repeat, nature is not careless, but humans do not know how to control their use of her bounty.
Yeah. So again, here the spirits are very direct in telling us it's our responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what the 1950.
Yes. Because in reality, that's what we do, right? We use Earth's resources to create luxuries, right? If you think of, they give an example of the Arabs in the desert, right? When they are crossing the desert and they are looking for an oasis, right, to stop, they are looking for the bare necessities. They are looking just to survive. They cannot afford luxuries, right? But when you have enough of the basic and you get comfortable with the basic, that's when we start accumulating extra luxuries, right? And when we create the necessity of luxuries, then it's when we start creating problems for ourselves, because what I have in excess, someone is lacking. So if we distribute equally, again, Earth provides.
I mean, sometimes we could have worked this.
Yeah. So, you know, again, it comes back to us as imperfect spirits, still struggling and still putting our wants above others' needs, right? Because yeah, needs, exactly. Yes, because and again, as I said many times, as we are imperfect spirits, our necessities are different from each other, right? Whatever some people feel comfortable with it is not enough to other people, but we need to find our balance to get to a comfort zone that we would be able to be happy with what we have in order to use our abilities to help others, right? When we start accumulating and only thinking of accumulating, we are causing harm to society. If we are accumulating but using this to distribute and to help others, we are doing a service. And if we have more than our, our neighbors or our colleagues, but we are using this as a means to help others, or let's say someone that is the owner of an industry gives employment to 300 people, right? It's important. Is he or she richer than the 300 people? Yes. Has more resources, have more luxuries. But if this person is helping, really helping, not abusing the employees, in a kind of a good environment, it's helping, it's providing help and assistance to 300 families, right? So that's the role that you are supposed to play, understanding the differences of living in society and using our abilities and our resources to be able to help those in need. And to do that, we need to, again, be comfortable with our lifestyle, right? Comfortable in the sense having the necessities filled and not being excessively worried with how we are going to pay the bills by the end of the month. Because if you keep worrying about the necessities too much, you don't find time to help others. Can you adjust yourself? Yes, and we should try to adjust at a higher or lower level if it's necessary. If we're making less money, we have to adjust. Is it difficult? Yes, it is, because we are still imperfect spirits and we want to have what our neighbors have and we don't, right? But in theory,
Keeping up with the Joneses.
sorry?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, it's like the movie, yeah. So, but again, all ends up being, again, us as humans with our imperfections that cause the differences in the resources that are available. Again, depending on the development of the region you live, you have less or more of a problem of distribution of wealth and different problems. But we have, if you compare today with the time of Kardec, we live in better conditions. A larger percentage of the population is able to survive without having to struggle, but still a very large part of the population of Earth, which is, I don't know if I read correctly, it's probably close to 1 billion people in the world still struggling to find meals for 1 billion, yeah, you have to consider India, which has 1.4 billion. You have China, and in the African countries, a lot of those people still struggle to have food available at
Even Haiti.
Haiti, that is going to a big crisis now. Even the countries, in Latin America, there is a large population of people living in below the line of poverty, because when poverty is when you have the ability to survive and to provide. Below the line of poverty is when you don't have even the ability to put food in your table. And I think it's like 1 billion people still. But, it's 1 billion is 1/8 of the population of the Earth. At the time of Kardec was probably a larger percentage. I don't know exactly the numbers. But even in those countries, in France, in UK, the developed countries, you have people dying of hunger. You had a big famine of Ireland that caused the big immigration to the US. That was in the second half of the 18th century, right?
Exactly, it was like 1850, 1860,
Yeah.
they came here.
At the time of Kardec. It was caused by a big
Most of them came, many of them came as what they call slave, what they call indenture servants.
yeah,
And it was like they were practically enslaved for 20 years. After 20 years, then you were like a promising, you were released.
street, yeah.
But most
So yeah, we have to look at this as we are evolving, but we're still far away from finding a solution for it. Okay.
706. Should we understand the fruits of the earth to mean the products of the soil? The soil is the fundamental source of all other products, which are only transformed versions of the products of the soil. As such, the term fruits of the earth should be understood to mean anything that human beings enjoy in their physical lives.
And it's interesting because this is before we start using oil, right? This is before the use of oil as a source of energy. And so Yodes is saying here, the soil is fundamental source of all products, right? So we will end up using oil. And now, you know, I was reading today about lithium, which is very important component, lithium for electric cars. If we want to move to electric cars, we need to find more lithium, and we need to have a larger production of lithium. Lithium that is used in our cell phone batteries and things like that, but in electric cars is huge. So
e-bikes too.
e-bikes,
Any electrical battery.
any electrical battery, yeah. Yeah, and actually, you know, the other day we were watching a series on TV that passed in the future, and one of the big issues was that Earth was running out of lithium, and because the Earth was run by lithium, they needed to find in the outer space lithium. So again, but again, it's where do we find it? Right, on Earth. Earth provides everything. It's just a matter of yeah, yeah, everything, minerals, everything. So yeah.
707.
Yeah.
There are always individuals who lack the means to survive despite living surrounded by abundance. Who should be blamed for this? At the selfishness of humans who too often prevents them to do what they need. Next, the most often, the individuals themselves are to blame. Christ said, "Seek and you shall find." But these words do not imply that all you have to do is look down on the ground to find anything that you may want. You must search for what you want passionately and with perseverance, without being discouraged by obstacles that are often only a means of testing your determination, patience, and resolve. While civilization increases our needs, it also increases our resources and means of survival. However, we must confess that there is much that still needs to be done. Civilization will achieve its tasks only when human beings no longer lack the necessities of life, unless this is through no fault other than their own. Unfortunately, many individuals choose the wrong path, and because nature has not intended it for them, they fail. That is when they lack the intelligence to succeed. There is room for everyone, but each person must assume his or her own place and not that of another. Nature cannot fairly be held responsible for the effects of a flawed social organization, nor for those of personal selfishness and ambition. We would have to be blind, however, if we did not acknowledge the progress that has already been accomplished in this direction among the most advanced nations. Philanthropy and science have focused on the betterment of humankind, and despite an increasing global population, they have managed to minimize the effects of insufficient production dramatically. Today, the most unfavorable years of an economic cycle are far less disastrous than in the past. For example, hygiene, which is a critical point for public and individual health, and of which our ancestors had little or no knowledge, is a constant subject of scientific research and investigation. Likewise, refuge is provided for the unfortunate and suffering, and every new scientific discovery is made to contribute to the general well-being of all. May it be said that we have attained perfection? Oh, certainly not. But what has been accomplished is just a glimpse of what may be done with perseverance. Human beings must focus on seeking practical improvements instead of wasting their energy on idealistic projects that set them back rather than pushing them forward.
Okay, this is a long commentary by Kardec, which is a very interesting one, right? But first, the spirits, again, blame ourselves for our selfishness, and but also advise us that we need to work, right? It's another law, one of the natural laws, the law of work, right? So we are not supposed to wait for nature to give us what we need without going and working for it, right? Because work is a mean of progressing, evolving, and we are here to evolve. So in order to evolve, we need to work, and to work is to put the resources of Earth to good use so we can all share what Earth provides to us, right? And then Kardec, on his comments, he talks about, it's interesting when he talks about the progress made at that time when he wrote this, 1857, right? This was before Pasteur, right? Elmo, when was Pasteur? Same time also, right? Pasteur discovering the microbes and the contaminations and everything. So it was at that time, right? So already giving better chances of survival for those that were going to hospitals and were treated. And then Kardec talks to us about, we need to be aware of our qualities and our limitations, right? Because sometimes people lack resources because they choose to follow a path that it's not for them, right? They choose to follow dreams that cannot help them put food in their table. Again, we should all try to find what we find enjoyment, and work should be because of a source of pleasure. But if I decide to be a musician without any ability to be a musician, I'm going to die of hunger, because if someone doesn't help me, providing me food, I have no ability to play an instrument, to compose, or anything. If I insist of playing an instrument that I don't know, I don't have any ability. So that's, it's a simple, stupid example, but that's what Kardec is telling us here. Don't try to do what you can't, right?
Yeah, but let's not forget also that he said, as a self-person of humans, who too often prevents them to do what they need. Next, what you talked about.
Sorry, what?
The first one, he's telling the society itself is sometimes preventing individuals to blossom. And then after he
Yes.
says that, they said next, is have that individual responsibility.
But Kardec was telling this us at that time, because at that time you had the problems of classes, right? You cannot change.
The black experience in the United States.
Yes, you had the
They say that the greatest crime that was committed against black in the United States was not the fact that they were denied participation in the institutions of society, but the fact that they were taught to hate themselves.
oh, that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
That's very interesting. So they have no, they liberated them with a proclamation, and then what? You have people homeless.
Yeah.
With no jobs, and now, hey, there's a law against vagrancy, they're gonna put you in jail. This is
Yes,
this is
it's-
history, they put you in jail, and then they don't, the state doesn't have money to provide for those prisoners, okay, we're gonna employ them in plantations.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that was for a very long time. Yeah,
Yeah. And the selfishness of it, who too often prevents them to do what they need. And next, we're talking about it. He said there.
yeah,
Quite
and that time, right?
And in 1850.
It was much was a much more serious problem because
There was still slavery here.
because nowadays you have persecutions, discriminations, but they are not legal. And at that time it was
Did you
legal.
know that Biden just signed a bill
Yeah,
making illegal lynching just now? Lynching was.
yeah. I read in the last elections that some of states voted in forbidding slavery, right? And slavery ended officially in this last election in some states, right?
Some part of Texas.
Yeah. Which,
So much of Texas, really?
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that, but my point is that the first line here, it talks about this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
few months ago, in front of the United Nations, they have a very big, huge toilet bowl. That was, I don't remember the statistic, the percentage, but it was to show that more people in the world have cell phones than they have sanitation.
Wow.
Really?
2022.
That's the number two.
Yeah. See, luxury instead of necessities, right?
What you go see.
Yeah.
The next step, I would say.
Yeah. So again, it's our fault. We need to do better as society.
But this is what I'm talking about, how, what do you call that, advance or a year, those grade square, huh?
Yeah, the spirits were providing the answers that could stand the test of time, be adequate for the time that they were answering, because of course people at that time needed to understand what the spirits were saying, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to publish this book. But also you can see that they had the concern, and here I'm talking about the answers from the spirits, because the comments from Kardec are comments from Kardec adapted to the time that he was writing. So you may see some of the comments, but it's not very common that they are more or less adapted to the time. But the answers from the spirits,
Yes.
they stand the test of time, right? With
Yeah.
200 years later, we're still reading them and still they make complete
They
sense.
say, of course.
Yeah. So of course, this comes from evolved spirits, right? That's why
Call themselves spirit of the truth.
spirit of the truth, which is the leaders of the codification. Yes, the spirits that brought the codification. Yeah. All right. Now time is up. Any other final questions, comments? Okay.
Placing our wants over the people, over people. Like that.
So this Saturday we have a lecture again at by the United States Spiritists Federation. It's our good friend and part of our group, Aloysio Rausch that went back to Brazil 1 year ago, but it was part of SGNY until very recently. His talk is based on the book that he translated by Ivone do Amaral Pereira, Sublimation, and it's called Law of Cause and Effect and Reincarnation. It's this Saturday, 11 a.m. by our friend Aloysio through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube and Facebook, okay? Our study this Sunday is the first Sunday of the month, so we are going to study the book Liberation. We are in the middle of chapter, forgot the number, 17? 17. We are going to finish the chapter and start the next one. The book club Wednesday, next Wednesday, is the last week of the book club in 2022. We're going to read the last chapter of the book, and then on January 4th, we start discussing Hail Christ, which is the next book of Emmanuel in the historical collection. We went to 2000 years ago, 50 years later now, and then Hail Christ. Okay. What else we have? I think that's all. December, just we are in, today is the first day of December. We SGNY will be closed in the last 2 Sundays. Well, last Sunday of December, first Sunday of January, right, which is New Year's Eve and Christmas Day, and will be closed also between Christmas and New Year's will be closed. Okay, so if you want to plan ahead. So we won't have one Thursday only of study, that we will not have it, which is the last Thursday of the month, but we won't have also 2 Sundays. Okay. Carol, you do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Philip, and everyone for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together this evening for our studies of the Spirit's book, our studies involving the law of reproduction and the law of preservation. We have learned that polygamy is a human invention adapted to circumstances or various populations. It is a social custom, not a necessity. Connections with loved ones may continue, but it may evolve in the spiritual world a bit differently than it might in the physical world. But eventually in the physical world, it will change and grow and evolve as well. Self-preservation is instinctive and a law of nature. All living beings feel it instinctively beyond comprehension. Humans should try to supply basic necessities for everyone in balance with the Earth's resources. Philanthropy and science will help us in pragmatic ways to evolve. However, we must do our part. May we be good stewards of the earth. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits who are helping us and guiding us, and the mentors as well. We are grateful for what we have received and what we have studied this evening, and may we go deeper and delving into these studies. We give thanks, and we have a great respect for the love, light, and peace of Christ that is coming through us, to us, and may we share this love, this light and peace, not only with our family members, but with the community at large as we go forward in our daily lives. The earth is going through a very strong shift, pragmatically as well as spiritually. So may we continue to be blessed and do our part to help in this assistance. We pray for suffering spirits in the physical world as well as in the spiritual world. And may, again, we continue with our prayers, with our studies throughout the week, so that we can be of better service. We can share our humanity, our creativity, our time, our talent, our treasure, and of course, the teachings that we have gleaned this evening. We are grateful for all that we have received, all that we have learned, and may we go forth and reminding ourselves to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace, in safety, in harmony, in truth, and in love. So be it. Thank you.